2035, a year that seems far off in the future, yet it's approaching faster than we realize. It's just a number, right? Just another year on the calendar, another page to flip. Another year, another set of days, weeks and months. Another cycle of seasons, another spin around the sun, another journey through the cosmos. But what if it isn't just another year? What if it holds more significance than we can imagine? What if 2035 isn't just another year? What if it's a pivotal moment in our history? What if it's the year the world goes to hell in a handbasket? A year where everything changes. Now, I'm not one for scaremongering. I don't believe in spreading fear without reason. But sometimes you got to call it like you see it. And what I see is troubling. And what I see, folks, is a world teetering on a knife edge. A world where the balance is delicate. A world where tensions are simmering, ready to boil over at any moment, where old grudges die hard, where past conflicts still cast long shadows, and where new threats emerge from the shadows, threats we might not even see coming. History, they say, repeats itself. And if we look back, we can see the patterns. And if that's true, we're overdue for a big one. Think about it. The signs are there. World War I kicked off in 1914, a war that changed the world forever. World War II followed hot on its heels in 1939, another devastating conflict. That's a gap of 25 years. Do the math. The pattern is clear. 2035 is 25 years after 2010. Coincidence? Maybe. But maybe not. Or maybe it's a sign that we need to pay attention to. A sign that we're on a collision course with history, a date with destiny that we cannot ignore. Wars don't just happen overnight. They are the result of long-standing tensions and unresolved conflicts. They fester, they simmer, they build up over time like a pot slowly coming to a boil, like a pot left unattended on a hot stove. These tensions can reach a boiling point if not carefully managed, and right now there are a lot of pots bubbling away, threatening to boil over. Each one represents a potential flashpoint. Take the South China Sea, for instance, a powder keg if ever there was one. The waters are heavily contested, with multiple nations laying claim to the same territories. China's throwing its weight around, claiming territory that doesn't belong to it. Their aggressive stance is causing ripples across the region. The US, ever the global policeman, is pushing back. Their presence is a counterbalance, but also a source of tension. Add in a dash of regional rivalry, a pinch of historical animosity, and you've got yourself a recipe for disaster. The stakes are high, and the potential for conflict is ever present. Then there's the Middle East, a region perpetually on the brink, the gift that keeps on giving. Decades of conflict, religious extremism, proxy wars, the list goes on. It's a tinderbox waiting for a spark. Any small incident can escalate into a full-blown crisis. And let's not forget good old-fashioned nationalism. It's on the rise everywhere. From India to Russia, countries are flexing their muscles, asserting their dominance. National pride is fueling military build-ups and aggressive posturing. The world is starting to look a lot like the 1930s. Back then, economic hardship and political instability paved the way for conflict. Back then, it was fascism and imperialism that lit the fuse. Leaders with expansionist ambitions led their nations into war. Today, it's a toxic cocktail of nationalism, religious extremism, and good old-fashioned greed. The ingredients may be different, but the potential for disaster remains the same. The echoes of the past are loud and clear. If we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. The world stands at a crossroads, and the choices we make now will shape our future. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the big players, the US and China, two superpowers locked in a dance of diplomacy and distrust. The US clinging to its global dominance, China hungry for its place in the sun. It's a classic power struggle, and like all power struggles, it's got the potential to turn ugly. Their economies are intertwined, their militaries are locked in a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, and their ideologies are like oil and water. Something's got to give. And when it does, the shockwaves will be felt around the world. But it's not just about the US and China, it's about the smaller players caught in the middle, the ones forced to choose sides, the ones who stand to lose the most when the shooting starts. Remember the Cold War, the era of mutually assured destruction? Duck and cover drills were a part of daily life. The constant fear of nuclear annihilation loomed over everyone. It was a time when the threat of a nuclear war was very real. Well, Buckle up, Buttercup, because we're entering a new era of warfare. Forget nukes. We're talking cyber warfare and autonomous weapons. The battlefield has evolved. Artificial intelligence now plays a crucial role, making life or death decisions without human intervention. Machines are taking over tasks once reserved for soldiers. It's the stuff of science fiction, but it's happening right now. The future is here, and it's both exciting and terrifying. Imagine a world where countries can cripple each other's infrastructure with the push of a button. Power grids, water supplies, and communication networks can be taken down in an instant. Wars are no longer fought on traditional battlefields, but in cyberspace. It's a terrifying thought, but it's the new reality we must face, and it's a very real possibility. Cyber threats are growing, and then there's terrorism, the wild card in the deck. Terrorist groups are unpredictable and constantly adapting. Groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda are constantly evolving, finding new ways to sow chaos and terror. Their tactics are always changing. They find new ways to instill fear and disrupt societies. They don't play by the rules. They don't care about borders or international laws. They operate without constraints. They don't care about borders. They're a global threat, affecting countries worldwide. And they are not going away anytime soon. The threat of terrorism is persistent and evolving, demanding constant vigilance. Section 5, 2025, A World on Edge. Fast forward to 2025. The world is a pressure cooker ready to blow. The global economy is in shambles. Climate change is wreaking havoc. Resources are scarce. And trust? Well, trust is about as common as a unicorn riding a penny-farthing bicycle. Nationalism is on the rise. Populist leaders are fanning the flames of fear and division. Borders are closing. Walls are going up. The world is fragmenting, turning inward. It's a dangerous time to be alive. Section 6, 2027, The Cyberstorm. The first shots of World War III aren't fired on a battlefield, they're fired in cyberspace. A massive cyber attack cripples the US financial system. Banks go offline, ATMs run dry, panic ensues, fingers are pointed, accusations fly. The evidence points to China, but they deny any involvement. The US retaliates with a cyber attack of its own, targeting China's power grid. Millions are plunged into darkness. The cyber conflict escalates, spilling over into the real world. Power outages, supply chain disruptions, communication blackouts. It's a wake-up call. The world is vulnerable, and the stakes have just been raised. Section 7, 2029. A shot rings out in the east. Tensions in the South China Sea finally boil over. A Chinese fighter jet collides with a US destroyer. Both sides blame each other. The incident sparks a chain reaction. Skirmishes break out, then full-blown naval battles. The US calls on its allies to condemn China, but the world is divided. Some countries side with the US, others remain neutral. A few, emboldened by China's assertiveness, offer their support. The world watches in horror as the conflict escalates. Section 8, 2032, A New Axis of Evil. Russia, sensing an opportunity, throws its weight behind China. They've been forging closer ties for years, united by their shared distrust of the West. Now they see a chance to reshape the global order. Other countries join the fray, aligning themselves with either the US or the China-Russia bloc. The world is splitting into two distinct camps. Lines are drawn in the sand. The drums of war beat louder and louder. Section 9, 2034, The Calm Before the Storm. An uneasy peace settles over the world, but it's a fragile peace, a powder keg waiting for a spark. Both sides are licking their wounds, rebuilding their arsenals, preparing for the inevitable. The world holds its breath, waiting, watching. Section 10, 2035, The World at War. It starts with a misunderstanding, a miscalculation, a false alarm. But by then it doesn't matter. The machinery of war, once set in motion, is difficult to stop. The fighting spreads like wildfire. From the South China Sea to Eastern Europe, from the Middle East to cyberspace, it's a global conflict fought on multiple fronts, with conventional weapons, with cyber attacks, with propaganda and disinformation. The world watches in horror as the nightmare scenario unfolds. The future looks bleak. The old world order is crumbling and a new one is emerging from the ashes. But what kind of world will it be? Section 11. A glimmer of hope. It's easy to be pessimistic, to throw up our hands and say we're doomed. But despair is a luxury we can't afford. We have a choice. We can resign ourselves to this grim fate, or we can fight for a better future. The path to peace is fraught with peril, but it's a path we must take. We need to build bridges, not walls. We need to find common ground, even with those we disagree with. We need to remember our shared humanity. The future is not set in stone. The choices we make today will determine the course of human history. Let's make sure we make the right ones. Let's choose hope over fear. Let's choose peace over war.